Hello. Today we will talk about the effects of reopening schools on the spread of COVID-19. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many countries around the world closed their schools, resorting to distance learning. However, as the new 2020 to 2021 school year started, many European and Asian countries reopened schools, while in the United States, many schools have remained closed for in-person learning. The goal of this study is to find out how reopening schools for in-person instruction affects the numbers of COVID-19 cases. Our question that we asked was whether or not reopening schools for in-person learning causes large COVID-19 outbreaks. We predicted that in-person learning can happen without a large COVID-19 outbreak. Here is why. Again, our question that we asked in the beginning of the study was whether or not reopening schools for in-person learning causes large COVID-19 outbreaks in schools. This question is important because pediatricians have noticed that in-person learning is essential for many students to succeed academically, physically, and mentally. Our hypothesis was that in-person learning in schools would not lead to a large COVID-19 outbreak in school-age cases. This is because of three reasons. First, reopening schools has worked in European and Asian countries with no large outbreaks. Second, children have been shown to show less symptoms that could possibly spread the disease. Third, the CDC has detailed guidelines for methods that could limit the spread of the virus. In our world today, people are disagreeing about whether or not to reopen schools for in-person learning. Some people have noted that schools should stay distance learning only because there are not enough contact tracing frameworks in place for them to reopen safely, while others argue that the risk of COVID-19 is not enough to warrant the closure of schools that give students necessary social interactions and guidance. More research must be done in order to find the best way to reopen schools without causing a large increase in COVID-19 cases. The definitions that we use in this study are as follows. Distance learning, or remote learning, means full online instruction with no students on campus for in-person classes. A hybrid model is a staggered schedule for students going to school, with some students going to in-person school some days and other students going other days. Thirdly, full in-person learning, or just in-person learning, means that all students who have opted in go to school every day, 5 days a week. Publicly available data sets were used in this study to create visualizations showing how reopening schools affects the spread of COVID-19. Around 5 districts were chosen from each of the categories: distance learning only, full in-person learning, and hybrid models. After the counties and districts were chosen, the data was examined in 3 steps. First, the number of pediatrics cases in the whole state was evaluated to see if there was a sharp increase. Second, the number of new cases in a number of counties within a period of time before and after schools reopened was compared. Third, the detailed trend of new pediatric cases over time in 3 specific counties was analyzed. To make sure the results are accurate, counties with more than one school district using different reopening models were excluded from this study. Now let's look at our results. In Florida, from mid-July to early September, the trend of new pediatric cases can be seen as decreasing. When the first schools reopened on August 10th, the trend of cases continued to decrease. The red vertical line it shows when the first schools reopened for in-person learning. In Tennessee, from mid-July to early September, the trend of pediatric COVID-19 cases is also decreasing, although not as much as Florida. The number of cases continued to decrease after schools reopened. There were 7 counties in the study that chose to have their schools provide distance learning only. 6 out of the 7 sampled counties followed the downward new case trend of their states. This group of counties can be seen as a control group, showing that the trend in Florida and Tennessee with COVID-19 cases is the number of cases decreasing. Therefore, In other groups of counties, a decrease of new cases indicates that the method of schooling has no effect on COVID-19 cases. This figure also shows that Shelby County, with a distance learning only model, had a slightly higher number of cases. This suggests that distance learning only model may not prevent an increase in cases all the time. There were 5 counties in this study that chose to have their schools provide a hybrid learning model for all willing students. In all of the counties in this study, the number of cases went down. This indicates that the in-person part of the hybrid model did not accelerate the spread of COVID-19. There were 8 counties in this study where schools provided full in-person learning for all students who chose to do so. In many of the counties, the number of new COVID-19 cases decreased after schools reopened. In 3 counties, however, the number of new cases went up. We are going to examine the 3 counties in more detail. This chart shows pediatric COVID-19 case trends for Bradford County, Florida, from July 19, 2020 to September 10, 2020, with the 7-day average shown in orange. The increase of cases was on average only 2 to 3 cases higher than normal each day, and the trend is stabilizing. It does not continue to go up. Overton County in Tennessee has a similar curve to Bradford County in Florida. Overton, Tennessee had a small increase in new cases after school started, with an average of 2 to 3 cases. However, the trend stabilized and went back down to 1 to 2 new cases a day. One outlier in this study was Knox County, Tennessee. It shows a record high number of cases and a continuous upward trend. The upward trend of new cases at the end of August may be attributed to the relatively high number of high schools and an university in this county. The 15 high schools started school on August 24th, and more than half of the school-age cases are from the 14 to 18-year-old high school group. The other factor contributing to the higher number may be due to the spread at the University of Tennessee, located in Knoxville. As the college students returned to class on August 19th, COVID-19 cases started increasing across the county, with over 303 cases per 1,000 people in the 18 to 44-year-old age group. This is very high compared to the 90 cases per 10,000 people in the 0 to 17-year-old age group. This chart shows that most of the COVID-19 cases in students in the U.S. come from college, and then the second highest was high school. The number of cases in elementary and middle schools was relatively low compared to the other grades. This supports our claim that the large number of high schools and the university contributed to the record high numbers in Knox County. In conclusion, our data indicates that it can be safe for schools to reopen for in-person learning with the proper safety procedures. This study suggests that the reopening of the schools has not caused an outbreak in most counties. And with schools reopened, students would be able to get the in-person instruction they need to succeed in school. Next steps from this study could be further research into Knox County and how often what happened there happens elsewhere. Also, further studies could be to continue to monitor the trends in the number of cases for an extended period of time. Thanks for listening.